So Maya, there's both the pressure externally from like the people who greenlight things, the executives, and there's the pressure internally to be liked, to feel validated. So how do you stay true to yourself as you're making art and there's all these different internal and external forces that are telling you this is what's going to be validated, this is what's going to do well? What are you learning about that?
I think it's extremely difficult. I've been talking about this a lot recently, about how I feel when I'm making something. And when I'm actually making a piece of art, I'm like, I don't care if anybody likes this. I love it. And I love you. And this is amazing. And like, this is counterculture. This is outsider art. Like, this is crazy. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
And then I could have put something out and I find this bottomless pit of the desire for approval.
Totally,
And wanting people to be, not only some people to really like my weird thing that I didn't care if anyone liked. I actually would prefer it to change the world.
Yeah.
Is seemingly the feeling. Actually, everyone must, and I don't understand why they're not.
Yeah,
it's like, how can you not understand why they're not? You made something profoundly weird.
Yeah.
And because you wanted to. And so I find it really difficult, and I would love to talk to you again in 10 years and hope that I had come to some kind of conclusion. Right now, I feel like deeply in the exploratory phase of trying to either be like, okay, guess what, Maya? Let's try to make some pop art. Like, you want approval that badly? Let's go get it. Or wait, like, how can I separate myself a little bit from the feedback loop so that I don't, I've been talking about trying not to look at numbers anymore. Your phone has made it so easy for you to see numbers. How many unread emails do I have? How many unread texts? How many followers on Instagram? How many people stream my song? How many people watch this TV show? There's this counting of people that actually used to be so much harder. Like, even in the old rating systems, it was kind of a lie. Like, they could be bought and sold and exaggerated, and they were imperfect. And now there's this really perfect counting that's happening, and I'm working on trying to separate myself from the numbers so that I'm making them not for that. So I don't, that's what I'm working on right now.
I really do agree with you, at least in part, and I'm also interested in what the future of media is going to be like. Because the automatic part of it, the numbers, the algorithms, the computation, that's not going away.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I'm really curious to see, as you said, the next 10 years. You'll just come on season 14 of Pod Crush.
Yeah,
and,
I'd like that a lot.
Sophie's daughter will be hosting.
I'm curious too. I agree. I don't think anything is going away. I do think that as conscious, thoughtful citizens and artists and people, we get to examine our responsibility to consume that information, and whether or not it is our responsibility, or if it's actually our responsibility not to. And I'm, because there's all these old stories about, like, Sam Shepard's friends not letting him go to the party at when his first play was on Broadway. They were like, you're going to get, consumed by the industry if you do that. Like, you can't take the praise. You got to just go back and keep writing. You're an artist, man. You're not a industry hack, And now it feels like that whole attitude is dead. Maybe for the better, but nobody would tell you not to go accept your party or your award. There's no cool level to being like, fuck the man. No one would tell you not to give your song away to an advertisement, or the industry is so economically deprived that artists are in no way being encouraged. You can't make a living wage and fuck the man. So we're like, you used to be able to kind of buy a house and fuck the man, and now it's really hard to. So it's
there's a different context in which you have to fuck the man in order to have a house now.
Yes.
Basically is the no?
Yeah, it's true. No, that was a laugh, not a scowl.
Yeah.
Maya, before we're talking about your career in some sense. We're talking about art and movie making and music making, but before we talk about specific projects, I want to just ask you a couple of questions that we ask every guest on Pod Crushed about middle school. One of them is, what were your first experiences around love in quotation marks, maybe a crush or your first rejection or heartbreak around that time, around 12?
I remember it exactly at 12. I had my first kiss, and it was actually in the apartment building that my mom now lives in. Someone was having an 8th grade graduation party, and my first kiss was this boy who I will name drop, named Carter Scott. And I thought he would be an appropriate person to kiss because he already made out with my 2 friends. And I was like, well, if that had already happened, then he's probably pretty safe. And it was right around like when hookup culture was starting, but not where where people would come up to you at a party and they'd be like, do you want to hook up? Which in some ways is like a good consent dynamic, but is also
that's what I think is the best part of that.
Yeah.
Is definitely
is the do you want to?
Sure.
Is good. But it was also pretty intense when there was like 3, not to overestimate my prettiness. I was just new at a new party environment. I was kind of an unfortunate 12-year-old, but I was there and there were 3 boys and they were all like, hey, we're just curious, like, which one of us do you want to hook up with?
Wow.
And they were all standing there and I felt a lot of pressure. So I picked the one that my friends had already hooked up with because that seemed safe, vetted territory. Yeah. And then we went upstairs and we made out, and I remember my eyes were open. And at one point I was like, I'm so sorry, my mom is calling. And she was not. And,
did
I
you
was
have
like,
a cell phone
take this
on
call.
you?
I did
Okay,
have a
good.
cell phone.
Yeah,
right. I just got to take this call. And I didn't enjoy myself very much. And so that was an interesting chapter. But my first real crush was kind of twofold. I had like a really big crush on my friend that I went to middle school with. And it was like that confusing period of like, is this girl my friend or do I have a crush on her? Like what's going on in this environment? And I had that, and that was kind of sweet and confusing and like playful and lovely actually. And then I had a big crush on this boy I went to school with who was like the bad boy who like smoked a lot of weed and like skipped class and played piano in the lobby. And and that was the first person that I was like, I love you.
Yeah.
And like cried over and ate too much ice cream and So those were kind of my first experiences of that.
I love that the bad boy played piano in the hallway.
I know, like he's a bad boy, but he's still an artist.
Yeah.
But he's still an artist. That was what my school was like, sort of, was like the bad kids were like, I'm cutting class and going to the Met.
Yeah.
I ended up going to St. Anne's, which, Penn, I think you're familiar with.
a bit. Yeah.
And I ended up going there, and it was like, the bad kids were the kids who'd cut class to go hang out with their art teacher.
Yeah.
It was a strange environment.
We have one other question we ask everyone. I feel like your parrot story might count if you want to use that one. But if you have another one that comes to mind, we ask our guests if they have like, there's like a particularly awkward or embarrassing memory from those teen years that like really stands out.
There's so many, so many. But here's a classic. The parrot one is poetic and great, but a classic is that I was on a like kind of like an Outward Bound style camping adventure with these 2. It was like this was 10, 12-year-olds and 2 18-year-olds. One of whom was a Hollister model. Okay, an actual living,
I forgot
breathing
about Hollister.
Hollister model.
Breathing.
And he liked Taylor Swift.
Oh my gosh.
And
He had it all.
He had
I'm
it
already in
all.
love.
He had it all. He liked Taylor Swift. He made amazing playlists, and he was a Hollister model. And that 2-week period when we were in the middle of nowhere was when I first stopped my period. And we were on a camping trip on the top of a mountain, like in a tent, and I thought I'd shit myself. Because that's what you think sometimes. And I was like, what is going on? And then I had to go talk to the Hollister model and tell him that I figured out what was going on, because I'd been appropriately talked to by, parental figures. And I had to explain to him that we needed to hike 6 miles off the trail to a convenience store with which to purchase the appropriate equipment, and it making 10, 12-year-olds hike 6 miles for a tampon was horrific.
Wait, so you guys hiked?
We did
the 6 miles.
Wow.
And they all knew why.
I don't know if they did, but we ended up at a convenience store, and and I told one girl, and so you all know what happens if you tell one girl. Yeah.
Wow, Maya, that's a classic period story. Like at the summit with the model. Yes. I mean,
it's classic. It's classic.
Was his shirt on or off? Just curious.
It was on. It was on. It was on. But it did come off.
Took it off.
It did come off at times. It did come off at times. Yeah, it was a very eventful trip. We also got chased by a bear at one point.
Wow.
It was really.
Oh my God.
This is actually a funny story and very fast. But we got chased by. We were hiking up this mountain, and then all of a sudden we turned a corner and there was a bear, and then we had to run the other way and like drop our packs, because that's what you have to do. So we were all dropping our packs. They had our passports, and then we got to the bottom of the mountain. We'd escaped the bear. And we all needed our packs back. And so we found out that they'd gotten our packs back because the bear had drunk all of our Nyquil and then passed out on top of all of our packs.
No, that cannot be real.
This is like the opposite of cocaine bear. I love this.
He just drunk a whole bottle of Nyquil and like passed out. And then they were able to move the bear, inoculate the bear and move the bear and then take the pack.
This whole trip sounds like it's scripted.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I know. It was very funny.